Good evening, Sandy Herrick.
Hey, Dana.
How are you?
You?
I'm doing great.
You look good over there. You look all perky and shiny and beautiful and blue.
Well, thank you. And you look all perky and shiny and refreshed from coming back across the big pond.
Fresh from an adventure that landed me in Copenhagen, took me to Sweden, back to Copenhagen, and then Amsterdam, and Monday I landed. I have a little bit of jet lag, but it's all worth it. I'm going to organize my seat here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unscripted. Is that what we're doing?
No, we're
Where are we?
wrong day and time, Sandy. Come back over here on this side of the pond.
Okay. That's soon.
Yeah. No, tonight is looking deeper.
There we go. Hi. Somebody's got to keep me on the wall. Oh.
And hello to everybody. Hey, Kelly Spencer.
Kelly.
Good to see you. And Todd Francesco.
Hi, Todd.
Now, it's good to have everybody in the house. As you're filing in, welcome. It's good to be back. Good to be together. Hello, Margaret Marchwinski. It's great to see you here as well. Tonight, Sandy and I are talking about a subject matter that we were actually asked some time ago to talk about. And Sandy, will you lead us in a bit of a centering, a gathering, as we prepare to talk about such a deep subject?
Well, the deep subject is when one chooses to take their own life. And so this has been a really radical opportunity for us to talk about the soul, the spirit, and the dialogue, the inner dialogue that someone has that would decide to complete their life in a fashion of that they take it. So take a deep breath, because by now we all know that there is a kind of a rash explosion of people taking their lives, certainly in the celebrity world or in the intimacy of your own experience and family and friends. And so, or if you are someone who contemplates it yourself, I'd like to invite you to be with us and to bring your spirit and your soul and your humanness to share with us tonight. So deep breath. It's hot. It's very hot. So I'm kind of like, it's muggy in New England. So we would like to take a deep breath and come into this place that is truly that inner place of sacred. We need to have a gentle breath so that we can feel and experience our breathing. We would like to invite any and all souls that have taken their lives, or those who are contemplating taking their lives, and to know that this is a conscious and a subconscious dialogue. And to come, you are invited without fear of judgment or shame. You are here to embrace the dialogue of the inner being. We offer blessings, healing, and that touch of tenderness to truly come and caress the skin, sink into the tissue, find that inner part of the heart, and to even caress the soul and the spirit of a being that struggles or contemplates, or for anyone who has. And we extend the right of however you process this to be respected. Deep breath. And I would just like to say blessings. Blessings to those that have crossed over. Healing. Healing to those that have been confused and wondering where they are. Did they make it? Blessings for knowing that the line has been crossed and cannot be returned to where you were debating. There was a decision. And that we allow you the invitation to be broad in knowing, stay connected, stay in your dignity, and to please embrace the heart with tenderness and love, and be graced with your humanness. Deep breath. And come back into your bodies when you're ready, figuratively and emotionally, and open your eyes and welcome to the show. Thank you, Dana.
You're welcome. Sandy, as we're getting started, some of our viewers are wondering if you could move your camera down so they could see you more fully. There we go. Yep. Beautiful. There, now we can see you better. Excellent. Okay. It was, probably 3 months ago that I was approached by one of our listeners down south asking us if we would talk about this particular subject, because at that time, I think it was just after the passing of Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade. And it really brought the subject of suicide into the arena again for many of us to take a look at, some for the first time, and for others, the question was, is this ever going to end? And good God, what is going on? What's happening right now? And what does happen when someone takes their life? What is that like for them? What is it like for those that are left behind? It's a very deep subject. We've kind of waded into it before. When I approached you with it, Sandy, how did you feel about talking about this subject?
I felt appropriately invited into a conversation that is becoming far too normal in the, oh my God, it's happening. Oh my God, we know people. Oh my God, it does need to be talked about because it's no longer the last resort of someone. It's, may I be bold enough to say there may be an epidemic of that something is happening with our chemistry that is challenging the way we feel about being alive or deciding to stay alive. And I do believe it's chemical. So thank you for the invitation.
Mm-hmm. So have you ever known anyone in your lifetime that's taken their own life?
Yes. And it's that type of surprise and sorrow of, first and foremost, the shock. Mm-hmm. Second, did I know? Did I see the signs? Third, to know that each person that I do know that did that, I did not understand the reasoning, but I found out later that there were for inside themselves a rational space, that it became rational for them to do it. And including myself in the place when I was in such a dire emotional state that there was nothing inside me that could rationally explain to me to continue living. And there was definitely an absence of some spark inside me or some desire inside me because the helplessness or the loss of my own sense of spirit to thrive had been beaten down or beaten out or lost, or the chemistry was not there to edit my decision. And I've said this before on our program, so I'll say it again for anybody that's listening or that's new or to refresh it, that my decision was to take my life. And as I was literally moving toward to get a knife, because my choice was going to be I would slit my throat, a voice over my left shoulder literally leaned in and whispered, "I want to live." And it was such a presence that I spun around and said, "What?" and it then was closer right to my ear. And literally, again, with such love and tenderness, I want to live. And within the next fraction of a second, this energy entered my body and brought a calm to me that soothed me, altered my physiological, psychological being in such a warmth that I felt embraced. I leaned back on the bed and laid down and felt cocooned. And so up until that moment, it is something that was a thought that started to stalk me, a thought that became a predator, a thought that debated me and started to have a stronger sense of its own debate. It was winning the debate. And it was kind of promising me, just be done with it. And again, I was at a very difficult time, and this would have been back in 1990, where everything I had achieved was taken away from me. Every ounce of my success, every ounce of the dream that I thought if I could be that, then I would have accomplished and then kind of moved forward. And it hit the wall and everything was over. And I was in my ego, in my sense of self, and in my sense of being with God or spirit, that I accomplished something or it was good, I got it right. It inflated in a way that was larger than me feeling I was successful. The doubt inflated and deflated me. And I had no recourse, even though I was in therapy. And the other thing that happened is that my PTSD got activated from my childhood. And I was doing a lot of therapy. So a lot happened. It wasn't just OG. So I want to be able to preference, do I know people? Yes. And it's heart-wrenching. But I also know that I was in a process that got interrupted. Thank God.
Thank God.
Yeah. And you?
Oh, I have. I've known several people that have taken their own lives. Catherine Ladyhawk, our friend, has a question for us, though, before we go there. What
Yes.
about when you feel that you missed something with someone, like you feel as though you didn't do enough, you could have done more? Why didn't I see those signs? What would you say to anybody who would have been shocked and horrified had you been able to carry through with your own taking of your own life? What would you have said to the people that said, Sandy, why didn't I see it? Or what could I have done to prevent it?
Well, I can talk about people who have come to me and say they didn't see it. And so what I said was, it wasn't visible. It wasn't visible. And there are times when it is so subtle that people don't necessarily talk about it because it's an inner dialogue. They don't necessarily want to be stopped. If they're talking about it, that's a red flag that says, pay attention, help me, figure it out. It's the quiet ones that are so good at their decision that there's no sign that we can catch. And we do take on judgment, self-judgment. We do want to take on blame, thinking that we may have had the power to have an intervention. And that is human thinking. That is cause and effect thinking of, why wasn't I watching closer? Mm-hmm. There we go. I'm belching, and anybody doesn't know that when we talk the truth in spirit, I belch. It's also that deep love inside us that wishes we don't have to grieve a friend because we weren't able to save a friend. So I say, it's not your fault in a literal way. And when you feel that way, know that there are times we're not supposed to do an intervention. We can't control some things. And you probably were doing what you could do the best you could by seeing the subconscious, by being there, by being present, by being available if they needed you. Being available if they needed you is also a subliminal connection. So it's a good question, Lady Hawk, and I certainly don't have all the answers other than there are a lot of times we don't see it because it's not present to see. Suicide is one of the great secrets. It's a great secret. Not everybody wants to be caught or talk about it. So go ahead. Mm-hmm. How about you, Raina?
Robin McCarthy is saying something, almost a sweet seduction into the darkness, wanting the pain to end, not wanting death, just no more pain. And that's a beautiful way of putting it. For myself, having had an experience in all of that with one of my children, ultimately, I loved this thought process. It was, Mom, it's not my body that wants to die. It's something in my life that I need to let go of.
Absolutely.
There's something that I'm thinking about or I'm expecting that wants to die, that needs to die. My body doesn't really want to die, does it? And so the question is, what is it that needs to die? What is it that needs to be let go of? And
what's killing?
Exactly, yes.
When I was in Sierra Tucson, and I was in the detox part of it, and I went because my emotions were overwhelmed. I was so burned out. I was imploding. I literally was imploding. And it was a generous place to go to in having myself be held and contained and do a tremendous amount of personal research. Therapy is personal research. And what they were talking about was suicide and in detox and this, that, and the other thing. And I raised my hand and said, actually, I'm here to commit suicide. And you could see them open their eyes and think like, oh dear, do we put her in a lockup situation? I said, I want to commit suicide to that aspect of me that's killing me, because I really want that part of me to stop stealing my life. And I know not everybody knows the difference of there's something inside me that's stealing my life because I'm so exhausted by it. I'm overwhelmed by it. I'm consumed by it. And then what was interesting is when I said, I really want to experience how to live without all this exhaustion or this shame. Shame kills almost better than anything.
It really does. And, when I was thinking about the show this evening, and thank you, Geffen, for joining us tonight and for being the woman that suggested that, perhaps we might do this show. I thought to myself, and I've been thinking for a very long time about this show, there are so many ways, actually, that people take their own life, and it isn't always in an instantaneous manner. Sometimes it's something, we might use the phrase, they're drinking themselves to death. They're drugging themselves to death. They're working themselves to death. There are so many ways that we will bring ourselves to our own death, rather than, as you just beautifully put it, look at what it is within us or around us that really wishes to die, whether it is the working or the drinking or the drugging or relationships or PTSD from something in the past. The other thing that I really like that you said is that therapy is, how did you put that, Sandy?
Research. Personal research.
Personal research. I love that. It is personal research. And if you're looking on the Facebook page, Looking Deeper, or Temple Within Radio and Media, you'll see that I did publish the suicide lifeline number in case you are in need of it yourself, or maybe you wish to have it for someone else, and also the website. We're very practical about this subject tonight. Maybe you're tuning in because this has been on your heart or on your mind yourself. But there are many ways that sometimes we bring ourselves to our own end. And it's not always as dramatic as a bottle of pills or hanging oneself or any of those sorts of things, but really
or
a gun. For me, the greatest thought is, what is that piece that's looking to be released, to be emancipated, to be let go of, or to be exorcised from somebody? What is it? And shame. Absolutely, Sandy. Absolutely. In all of the instances where people close to me have taken their own lives, the one common denominator was sexual abuse. One a perpetrator and one the victim of. And in both of those cases, it was shame. And the, I don't know if I want to use the word the demon of, but you know what I'm saying. There is...
It's a darkness.
It's a darkness. It is a darkness. It is an entanglement that can take place. So yeah, I mean, shame is an amazing thing. Yeah.
Well, shame is the same thing in reference to what Lady Hawk was saying, is that when someone has the shame of they could not prevent their perpetrator from perpetrating, the shame is, I could have, I should have, I would have. And, I should have known better, or I could have this, I could have that. And that shame builds up because the perpetrator is so good at transferring the shame onto, you asked for it, you want this is your fault, keep the secret, or I'm gonna kill you, or I'm gonna hurt somebody if you don't keep the secret. And the weight of the responsibility of that secret, anybody's secret, even for the PTSD of the military, when they come back, they have secrets that are shameful or hurting or confusing, and because they didn't know who they were in the moment when something happened, or they didn't know who they became because of the aftermath. We don't know who we are until we try being and then find out, I am or I can't be. But it's always the litmus test of, I didn't know until I knew. There are people that play with drugs and alcohol that are in such denial, and there are family members that are in denial, where to see someone's pain is too painful. So they can be dropping signals all over the place, but denial is a psychological protective force field that keeps us in a place of, I can't face the facts because the facts are too intense. We don't have the emotional registry to be able to deal with the emotions or feel the emotions, or the emotions are so incredibly sensational that you feel like you're being driven crazy watching someone be crazy, and we can't watch it. It's not a choice sometimes. It's a psychological mechanism inside us that just goes, I don't see no ghost. I don't smell that alcohol. I don't hear that. It's a shutdown. It's a shutdown to our senses. And to come out of denial is a radical experience, because someone then can even get very depressed when they come out of denial and say, how did I not see that when it was right in front of me? How did I not see that? So we're talking about complications in life that are profound and subtle, and even the best of the best need time to explain it. So,
great dialogue.
But it is, yeah.
Lisa is saying, it's almost worse when you do see the signs. How do you help someone who does not want help and does not want to live? How do you deal with that? And can you deal with that? That's a really great question, Lisa. it's nearly impossible to help somebody who does not want the help or does not see a problem.
Well, let's describe help. Because I do have somebody very, very dear to me who was in such pain that they could not tolerate the pain. And their life was so compromised by the pain that they decided to call, find information that they were able to know how to do the act of suicide. And they took counsel with a very, very dear friend. And the dear friend was helpful in saying, I don't want you to die, but I understand your choice, that I don't feel the pain that you feel, and the pain has taken every vital aspect of you, and you can no longer tolerate it. So the help at this level was to listen to the person's reality rather than deny their reality, and to be very logistic and legal. And the friend said, I'm going to get the stuff, and I'm going to ask you to find me. So I want to make sure that you know it's happening, but you can't be here while I administer the drugs, because then it would be you assisted a suicide, which means you're part of the murder. I mean, this is serious stuff. So helping means you listen. Helping means you really kind of have to decide, who are you? My mother, point blank, asked me to assist her, that if she wanted to pass away, that I would help her. And I just looked at her and I said, oh, sure. That'll go over big with the family. I'll be in jail. Like, no. So, it's, and I had to really look at my love for my mother. Am I denying her something? And what I was denying was, I don't want to do something I don't really feel, no matter how much I love you, that I can participate in. Do it yourself or find somebody else. You have to find your own boundary here. You have to find the bravery of who you are, the spirit of who you are, the soul of who you are. And when somebody says, would you, I am very, very, very clear. It doesn't mean you have to. It means you need to protect yourself and know that when you're hearing someone talk, you give them the options of finding help before you, God bless you, before you step in. So you have to know who you are. And you have to know who the person is. Helping someone stay alive is as large of a support system as supporting someone to, I hear you, I miss you, I will miss you. I just had a conversation with somebody, and then because I know, I brought it up, and I said, I know when your beloved dies that you're going to have a challenge with staying alive. And I need you to know that you can come talk to me. But if you can't come talk to me and you go, I'll understand where you went and why. So I have no judgment on you, but you need to know I'm willing to talk to you. So sometimes we have to bring the conversation up of the obvious, that's so obvious, that it slips right by us. It's okay to talk about.
Which is why we're having the show tonight, because it needs to be talked about. It needs to be talked about it in real terms. Del Marie is talking about the fact that she had suicidal thoughts during menopause. With the fluctuation of hormones and trying to figure out, why am I having these thoughts? Why is this feeling washing over me? Cindy Lynn is saying the emotions are so intense it makes you literally crawl in your skin and want to leave your body at times. It's visceral. And really coming to learn, I love the personal research about what is it, what was it that I'm still carrying around? What is it that I'm not willing to look at? What is it that I need somebody to look at with me? Therapy is such a beautiful thing. Sandra and I both know wonderful therapists, and people who do the work, the intense work. And for those that are walking with somebody that's always on the edge of, what I've noticed in cases where, when we know someone who's always on the precipice is it going to happen today? Is it going to happen tonight? Will I see them a month from now? Or will they have decided to take their own life? It not only affects clearly the person who's having the thoughts of ending their own life, but those that are engaged with them, that are walking the human journey, where we can be drawn into the darkness, as Kelly is saying, drawn into mental illness, emotional illness, right alongside the person who is contemplating. And so when we are in relationship with somebody that's having those thoughts, always teetering between here and there, and we have to understand that we really need to keep a close check on ourselves and take measures to stay healthy in who we are. Because I'll tell you, for anyone who's ever really seriously considered doing it, what people are left with here on the earth plane is something that will never leave them for the rest of their lives. And, the two of the closest people in my life, absolutely in my life, took their own lives. And my life has never been the same, and not in a good way. And not in a good way. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, what does it matter anyway? Who am I? And because most people, when they come to that point, they're not really thinking about everybody else. It's the pain that's inside of them that really is so dark, there is no light to see by. But if there is anything that I can say is that the aftermath is devastating, and in some cases, quite frankly, leaves loved ones and friends with their own version of a living hell for a very, very, very long time. So suicide is never done in a vacuum. It isn't. And that's part of the reason for the show tonight. There is help available. There are different ways of looking at it, not being shamed by the fact that the thought has been had or an attempt has been made. But do understand, everybody, that each and every one of us makes a difference in this world. We do. And sometimes we cannot see it through the pain.
One of the things also, again, back to Lady Hawk, I have a very, 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 very dear client that was coming to me years ago, and her partner, her husband, was playing a very dangerous emotional game. And it was during a divorce procedure and this, that, and the other thing. And I had been working with this individual for maybe a year or so already, maybe longer, I forget now. But at one point she was talking, and I said point blank, because they were going to mediation and therapy together, it's like, you need to now prepare yourself for him to commit suicide. Mm. And she was like, what? I said, you need to bring it up in your therapy with the other person. You need to bring it up to your mediator. You need to write a letter to your lawyer so that you are not held responsible by the family or anybody else around you, or that you don't feel victimized by anybody coming around you and saying it's your fault, including yourself. And the debate we had about, wouldn't that, it was like, I'm telling you, this is what we need to do. And it took a little while, but the letter got written. Everybody was told, even the therapist, no, da-da-da-da-da-da. And when the day happened and she called, all I could say was, you're safe. You're safe. You're safe. As she cried, and the fallout and the devastation, it doesn't mean it prevented her from feeling. The feeling was there. But what was safe was nobody could put the blame on her, because she was blowing the whistle, saying to all the people that were responsible for his mental care, including his family. And everybody went, no. And the complications of, and I mean this in that way of how the subtleties work. Even if you know, and you tell people, that denial will activate or stay upheld until the very last second, and it was like, what? We're an interesting species.
We are.
But do the best you can. Do the best you can. Open a dialogue. If they're not talking about it, raise the question. Do not fear the subject. There are many people who drive off a road that are suicidal. And they had a car accident. So know that it's not just the obvious ways. It's it's an amazing schism, and it's got finality written all over it.
It sure does. I've had Kelly Manson. Hey, Kelly is asking a great question. How does suicide affect a loved one's pre-planned blueprint now that they are not in their life anymore? And thank you, Kelly, for posting NAMI.org, NAMI.org. I'm going to put that up on top. Todd's employer is a huge supporter of this particular group of people. But those are great questions about, so what does happen to the blueprint? Do we have to do it all over again? So does everybody just get a pass because the end of life is end of life? Do we all go home and we're happy ever after? Are we tossed into a vat of bubbling, blood and crushed bones and all those things that perhaps we've been told as children, cast into the fires of hell, I guess, as it's put. Sandy, in your experience or in your thoughts, you're 70 years old, so you've got a couple of years that you've lived. How do you feel about the question Kelly asked about what happens to the life plan?
Well, I think it's fulfilled. Because we don't know anybody's real life plan. We can only see how it unfolds. And I can also say that I have had experiences metaphysically with individuals who were acting out and crying out and trying very hard to get attention. And there are times when suicide happens because you slip over to the other side and you can't get back. And they were not necessarily wanting to die. And there's a slippery slope. So the blueprint to me has to be really deeply regarded as a sacred subject. And how does someone, I think I need to preference this with the Catholic religion, first and foremost, made suicide a mortal sin. So if you took your life, you couldn't get into heaven. So I'm wondering if that's a fear factor, if you don't take your life because you were given life, and yet they weren't allowing people to be buried in the graveyards of the sacred Catholic cemeteries, and they've lightened that up. They're changing some of the restrictions on you're excommunicated even from heaven. You can't get into heaven if you take your life. It's considered thou shalt not kill. And a lot of shifting and shaking has happened where I simply don't know, but out of what I do know, I'm going to have to say they're honoring it in some way that is their way, and I don't know how they come back. Do they come back to, well, are you going to get to the door again and not go through it this time, or da-da-da-da? I'm going to say this in a way of sophistication in that spiritual realm of, in all the lifetimes everybody and anybody's had, my experience is we practice almost doing everything. All of us have done anything and everything from one end of the spectrum to the other. Nobody's better than any of us because we it's like we get to experience it all and have to discern who we are. If I taste foul food, do I spit it out? or do I acquire a taste for foul food? Well, if you're starving to death and that's all you have, it's still food. And you have to discern at some point, who are you? What is your character? What is your moral code? And I also want to say that this is chemical. It's not psychological all the time, but the chemistry affects our psychological ability to discern. There's that place of when depression comes in, back in the, late 80s, the drug that they were giving, it begins with a P, it just left my brain.
Prozac.
What is it?
Prozac?
Prozac. They were giving Prozac out like candy because it was the new self-help drug. They did not know that if a certain chemistry was there with a bipolar or somebody that was already chemically challenged, that it dipped them into suicidal thoughts and they couldn't prevent it. The doctors were killing people by medicating them and went, oops. So trial and error. Is that the blueprint? If I'm a hardcore, well, your karma's your karma, yeah. And God bless those souls for taking the pill that took their life, that saved the lives of other people. You know, we don't know what the sacrifice or the service is sometimes.
Oh, Del Marie's got a great question. Good one, Chue. Wonder if Christianity promoted these beliefs with Native people, because in history, many were willing to sacrifice their lives during wartime. Loss of loved ones. Would that be considered suicide?
Well, I would like to say that I was thinking about this earlier because there was also the gift of the Native American when they decided it was a good day to die. And they would go out and sit in the cold and freeze to death. Or they would go off into the hills and wait. You know, there was like a sense of spirit. They weren't dying. They were going on to the continued breath. Is it suicide? You know, what are suicide missions? Mm-hmm. What about the Orientals, that their dignity was literally served by Harikari? And you were, you know, your karma's your karma, and you wanted to save face by, if you were shamed or shunned, you had the honor of taking your life. So, Del Marie, this is a spectacular manipulation by an organization that said, be obedient to me and control. I don't know what they were saying, but they were saying it, and they made it a sin. They caught it and made it a sin. And your tribal members, your family, had a deep sense of a continuing life force. So they went out and did something. Know that for those to stay, them crossing the line, and you know that in your heart, they went to another side. That was absolutely already well understood. They didn't disappear. They got bigger. You tell me if it's different.
I like that. Kelly is saying, you know, so what about those of us that are left behind? How does our blueprint change in relationship? And, you know, maybe that was the end of the relationship. Maybe that's where the earthly relationship was to end. Or an option. I believe that we all have more than one option of leaving.
Yeah.
Our lifetime. 2004, I had, you know, a left brain stroke, and that was an opportunity for me to leave. And in that moment, making a very conscious decision outside of my body that I was going to continue on, I chose not to participate in that exit point. How would that have altered the lives of my children? It would have altered their lives tremendously. Was I taking my own life? No, but I could have taken opportunity for, at that moment, going home. I do believe we all have more than one window of opportunity. Cats with 9 lives, you know, people who live through an accident, they don't know how they could possibly have lived through that vehicular accident, and yet they do. So I believe that we also have more than one lifetime with one another in different relationship. So that's a great question. I've never encountered anyone, as somebody who is a seer. People come to me for grief counseling, and many times it is because of suicide. And the question will be asked, are they happy that they did it? Denise, are they happy that they took their own lives? Are they at peace with... And I've never met anyone who was at peace with their decision. I am not saying that's because they're rolling around in a vat of, fiery hell. But most often, looking at the devastation that's left, that's in the people that are still here, loving them, is very difficult. Can be very, very difficult. And I've had people come to me who are clients of mine that did assist their loved one in ending their lives, that assisted in knowing that their loved one was going to go off to a hotel and not come back. And so the question I ask of them is, so are you at peace with that? Some are at peace with that. Yes, I feel as though it was what, was going to help relieve them of their pain, and I love them enough to do that. And others will say, no, I always wonder if there could have been another option. Could there maybe have been another choice available? And so they're left with a question mark, which we talked about earlier. Life has so many entanglements, good ones, bad ones, just entanglements with our experiences, all about choices. All about choices. But I've never had a young person that has either hung themselves, shot themselves in the head, that has said, I'm really happy that I made that choice. I've never had that experience.
My sense is that they would have preferred not to have the choice be made.
I was just going to say.
The option is there.
I was just going to say. I wish I would have asked for help. I wish I would have said something. I wish I would have said I was being sexually molested. I wish I would have spoken up.
Or I wish I would have known or considered that what was so dark in my life didn't exist in the first place.
Yes. So it's very multi-layered.
That option. Right. So there's that place of, I wish I didn't have to do this because I wish it didn't exist to even have me consider it or be caught by it. There are people who just kind of go, well, I didn't know I was actually doing that, and all of a sudden it was done.
Yes.
Where it's such a spontaneous drop in serotonin. It's such a chemical download of destitution.
Yes.
That it's now or never, and it's done.
Yes.
And for me, the regret is that it had to happen, or it was even the final option. I would have preferred not to have had the experience. But the relief for me in saying there was relief, the relief is the pain of that moment is over. And yes, they regret not being able to continue a life.
Yes.
And they ask for forgiveness of a pain they could no longer tolerate.
Yes.
And therefore, they have to make peace somewhere inside themselves with, please forgive me, I can't do it anymore.
Exactly.
And back in the 70s when EST and LifeSpring and all these self-help programs were really radically thumping and bumping about, their motive operandi was you chose. If you chose this, if you chose to be, then you chose your whole life. You chose your blueprint, so you chose. And there's that place inside of me that says the blueprint is an option. Like all blueprints, you can always redesign.
Exactly.
You can always say, you know what, I want the house a little bigger. I want the house a little smaller. Maybe I want a second story, and definitely a terrace. That we are told we have choice, but when we feel cornered and trapped and can't breathe, the blueprint, even if it's in a big house, how many people commit suicide in their mansions with all their money and all that stuff? So the blueprint might have been accomplished in their idea of what life is, and then they experience a lifelessness in all that they've acquired.
Yes.
Because it's empty.
It's empty.
It doesn't feel livable. So it's a fascination of what is a blueprint. But a blueprint is not a finite thing, Kelly. In my real experience of, if there's a blueprint, that means that we're building, we're designing, we're just putting down ideas. It's not something that's etched in stone. It's conceptual. And yes, the horror, that gasp of who is left behind. There are some people who have deep regret for the people that they're going to leave behind, and there are some people that actually say, up yours, F you, I'm out of here, deal with it.
Yes.
There is that psychological hostility where somebody goes, I'll show you, and they take their lives.
Yes.
And the shock is, you're not teaching the lesson, you're ending your life.
Yes.
That's a slippery place too.
Yes.
You know, it's such a great psychological endeavor to have a conversation about this, because I do not, and I want everybody out there to hear this, I am not a specialist in this. I am a spiritual person who will go through the threads of spirituality and mysticism, but I do not have the documentation or the proof of the chemistry of what happens, and I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychiatrist that can tell you what happens when you're on medications. So these are my feelings and my experiences, but please know that this is not finite either. The blueprint here is, if something doesn't resonate with you with what you're saying and you are troubled, call the number, go get help.
And it's all about dialogue. You know, one of the things that I love about you, and I have been doing shows together now for 10 years, is that it's about dialogue, talking about it. If you suspect that somebody you love is depressed, rather than, I just really don't, that's so personal, I just don't want to talk about it. Bring it up. And maybe at first you're going to get what are you talking about? I'm fine. Just mind your own business. But afterward, there might be an opening of further dialogue. Have dialogue. Talk about it. I will never forget when my kids were in high school. One of the things about being a seer is that sometimes we are visited by people who have departed, and not everyone yet knows. Okay, you're back. I was just talking about, this young man that was pleading with me, help me get back in my...
that thing.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
And it wasn't a half hour later, maybe, that my daughter called and said, you're never going to believe who killed themselves, Mom. And I said, well, actually, this is what I experienced a bit ago, sweetheart. And so, from a spiritual standpoint, his soul, his spirit was in an absolute state of pandemonium. Because as you said earlier, for some young people, the finality is not completely understood.
Right.
And so, if you're a young person that's watching right now, if you're an old person, Del Marie is pointing out that right now elderly are having thoughts of suicide at greater rates than ever before. And I do believe that it goes back to dialoguing and talking and not being ashamed and reaching out for help. And if you suspect that somebody is in needing help, offer your hand, offer your ear. Because when it's done, it's done. when it's done, it's done. And I sit with enough grieving parents in my practice. I guess it makes me really emotional when I talk about that. Apparently, I have deep thoughts and feelings about those that are left. And yeah.
I want to reference with the elderly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're getting feedback. Assisted living, or if somebody is terminally ill, is it suicide if they choose to end their life? Because now there are laws that says somebody that has a terminal disease or a situation that they have the right to choose, that they don't go to the bitter end and suffer and bring the suffering of their family into that journey with them.
Yes.
That there's a group consensus of, you know what, it's done. Keep the money for you. Rather, it's like there's an exhaustion of how much pain is someone supposed to have in order to satisfy the law of legalities that you weren't murdered or you didn't take your life, and God, you have to bear the bone to the bitter end. Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of a cruel God in my eyes when, there is that place of, if this were 200 years ago, hardly any of us would survive what it is we're all going through without the medication we're on. Mm-hmm. And so we have been divinely intercepted here with pharmaceuticals and doctors that prolong our lives beyond the tolerance of being able to have a quality of life. Mm-hmm. And the quality of life is not something that is only the elderly's experience. It's also a teenager's. It's also a child. It's also a young adult. What is the quality of life that they're having? And when somebody feels the of their life is not existing with the quality of, they can't tolerate it, there's that threshold of what does life really, what is a quality? What is life? What's the quality of life?
Right.
If there are people that don't know that tomorrow's a new day, if it's psychological, if it's shame, if it's, I just can't bear this anymore. Bullying is bringing on suicides.
Yes, it is.
Of 10-year-olds.
Yes.
Children.
Yes.
Bullying.
Yes.
And to know that, and God bless my friend Susie, who is a spokesperson for bullying and is now receiving awards, saved her own daughter's life from that suicidal space of so much bullying that she had to go and confront the bullies and start saying, no, you don't die because you're being bullied. You have to realize these are cruel people. Get away from them.
Yes.
We have to be able to see where the pain is coming from to do an intervention.
Yes.
Because especially in this day of media, people, if they don't get the response, if they don't get the fame, if they don't get the stimulation, the serotonin of, oh, look, to think that a child would commit suicide because they only have several thousand friends rather than 140 million friends. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that it's the time in our society where our existence and our value is so shallow that we would risk being alive because of some superimposed identity that has nothing to do with who we really are. Mm-hmm. And so that's that place of get your kids off of Facebook, get them off of the social media, get them away from the addiction of having the stimulation that says, am I being responded to? Am I being liked? Am I being seen? And, because there's an exploitation going on that literally is killing children. Mm-hmm. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I like what you just said about getting to the source of the pain. Getting to the source of the pain. If we suspect that somebody is in pain, or we're in pain, reaching out and saying, at one very, very low, dark time in my life, right? 4:00 in the morning, I get a phone call, and who is it? Sandra Herrick. 4:00 in the morning.
Where are you?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so, there she was on the phone, and there we were at 4:00 in the morning talking. And yes, about, Todd and I just had our wills done. And, my friend Darlene Frederick, right?
I got a call into her today.
Oh, you got a call into her today. So not only is she my financial advisor, she and I go way back to high school here in Michigan, but in our friendship, she is the person that is willing to make the decision about when my life should be ended, if I am on life support, because I don't ever want to be, right? And I love this in wills now, if you are in a state where there is no quality of life, who are you designating to authorize, right, euthanasia?
Pull the plug.
Darlene. And
That's
so
right.
This is a conversation that she and I have had, because even though we're dear, dear old friends, I know that even though I am saying on a legal document signed by Lily and Kevin, right? And on this legal, Kevin Spencer, on this legal document, I know that when the day comes, if the day comes, Darlene will forever be impacted by that moment if it comes. And so we had a very deep conversation about Darlene. There's so much love there for me that you are willing to take on what happens after.
What I know about Darlene, by having the pleasure of meeting her, is that her practicality is so who she is.
Yes.
She doesn't have that blur of the emotional that would give her hesitation to honor your wishes with some, am I doing the right thing? She is pristine. I saw it, I witnessed it, and I watched her. It's like, you two are like way emotional. And her chemistry is so cubical in that space of, this is where it is, and you don't need to go anywhere else because this is the space that's clean. And when she sits in that clean space, for you to give her the honor of knowing that she will not be whimsical or fear her own emotion. Yes, she will grieve you. Yes, it will be sad. Yes, it's not something she wants to do, but it's something she will do. So interesting, will do. And how impeccable that you have the intelligence to select somebody that has the intelligence to say, these are the facts. These are the facts. And that everybody that's emotional around you will honor the fact that you know somebody that says, these are the facts. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, it's subtle. But her listening to you and knowing that if there's that place where you ain't coming back from this, sweetheart, unless you lay here for a while, and then it's only going to be chicken soup and vegetables. It's good to have somebody that knows that when you speak to her from your spirituality, that she sees who you are without losing herself in her practicality.
She's a magnificent Taurus.
Pristine. Yeah, pristine.
I love Taurus, yes. Yeah, absolutely, Del. Yeah, it is an amazing feature now that they offer in wills and such. It's a deep conversation because no matter how we go, when we go, those that are left behind grieve us, and grieving, wondering what more could we have done, what more was there left for you to do, how is the world now less than because you are not here. Was it a horrible passing? Was it a diabolical passing? All of those things, all of those questions happen. And for the person who is in the space, the darkness, I call it is such an inky black darkness that there is no amount of light in that particular moment that is able to creep in or flash in or flutter in. I have known one young man that was coming to something that I was doing at a church, and he had prepared himself to take his own life prior to what was going on at the church. Wrote the letter, took out his dad's gun, loaded it, and just as he was putting the gun to his head, all of a sudden his bedroom filled with light. And like you, the voice said, "Joseph, this is not your time. Put the gun down. Joseph, it's not your time." And he did all of that. He tore the letter up. He put the gun down. He unloaded it, put it back. He came to it. And after the program, I was doing a thing about angels. He walked me to my car. And he said, "Mrs. Iwana, I wanted to talk to you about what happened tonight." And I think that light in my room was an angel, wasn't it, Mrs. Iwana? And I said, "Yes, sweetheart, it was an angel. And it's not your time. And I'm happy that we're here celebrating your life and not getting an announcement of your death while we're all here together." Which is a question, and we have to talk about this for a moment, Sandy. Those that loved ones have passed in that manner, in whatever way, are they greeted by angels? Most of us think, what about angels, Yes. No one ever dies alone.
They're also greeted by their animals.
Yes.
They're greeted by their beloveds on the other side.
Yes.
And the personal experience for me is someone who said goodnight, took the dose, absorbed everything, was found thrashing on the bathroom floor, rushed to the hospital. They pumped his stomach and said, "Sorry, he's ingested everything." And to know that in his state of suspended animation, his cat came to him that was taken from him. And she said, "Come here." And she took him on, I got ectoplasma starting here, that's amazing. And she took him on a walk into his future and said, "This is who you're going to meet, this is where you're going to go, and this is who you're going to marry, and you can either cross over or cross over." And in that conversation, for him to be able to remember the dialogue, is it angels? Is it our loved ones? If people don't believe in angels or if they believe in totems, I'm going to say specifically, it is love.
It is love.
It's that spark of love that says you have an option here if there's that threshold. Not everybody gets the threshold, I'm sorry to say. But this was one of those thresholds. And when he woke up, this person literally came to the phone and called me and said, "Hey, I'm coming to see you." And it's like, "Well, yeah, I know." And then he told me what happened in his coma that he woke up out of. And sure enough, he came to live with me. And sure enough, he met the person that his cat finally introduced him to and showed. And that was in 1980. And they are still very, very well married and living a life that he protects himself in by staying safe within not overstimulating that which would give him depression. He's discerning how to protect himself. So, yes, angels, yes, spirits, yes, our animals, our beloveds, and yes, there is something on the other side that demands of us not to just be in the void. There's so much more on the other side that we don't even know about. I know what I've met. I know what I've been told about. But I know that so many people describe it in many variations of the theme that it will be what you believe in. It will be what exists for you. It will be the way that your intelligence or your psyche can comprehend the beauty of existence. And so I know angels came to me at another time, walked right through a wall, walked right to the bottom of my feet, and I'm screaming to my roommate, and there was not a word coming through me, and they touched me, and electricity came up my body from the tip of my feet through me, sections. It wasn't just zip, it was like, and it was rewiring me, so that I didn't have to only have one nerve ending that was going to end my life because I couldn't tolerate the pain. So, the other thing I'm going to say about the grief, the shock of everybody, suicide is shocking because when we hear it and don't know that we could have prevented it, or how do we prevent it, or even if it was even going to be in our lives, someone dying a low-grade, horrible, slow death, we get prepared for it. And then we say, thank God it's over. Now they're at peace. At least the pain stops.
Right.
But when we're shocked, when it's swept away from us, we can't go, oh, thank God. It's like, oh, what on earth? What on earth? So we have opinions about death and dying. And we don't have peaceful thoughts about it all the time. Right. We don't like people being ripped out of our lives without notice. Right. We don't like anybody being ripped out of our lives, whether we know it or not. That's just a fact. Even if they're going down the road without us, because that's a death too.
It is a death. There are many deaths, and some don't involve physical dying. But with that, Sandy, we are beyond the top of the hour. I have listed again NAMI.org on our screen here. For those of you that are listening via Spreaker, it is N as in Nancy, AM as in Michigan, I.org, NAMI.org. Check it out. Everyone's life has value. Everyone's life has a purpose. We don't always know what it is when we're in the dark place, why we are going through the dark night. Will there be a light at the end of the tunnel? We don't always know. But when we're getting to that place, to reach out, even if we reach out to, through a website, to one another, to reach out. Absolutely, yes. Dialogue, talk about it. And there you have it. Final words, Sandra.
There's always an option, and one of them is to communicate. Please reach out.
It's beautiful. With that, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for shining your light and doing what it is that you came here to do. Blessings be, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay. I just love our music before and after, so